Now, more than ever, I would be strongly against applying with a CV.
Wow.
I think one of the worst ways to apply for a job is a CV. I get like 10 DMs a day from recruiters and I haven't got the time for it, or it's so frustrating. Some people, Hamid, he landed 3 job offers at the age of 19, 3 DevOps offers. It's even shocked me.
That's crazy.
Because I didn't even know that.
19? That's crazy. So he has no degree.
Oh, he's 19?
yeah.
And I think people get so fixated about breaking in. I think tech is no longer about breaking in. It's about staying in and being committed. Everyone's one redundancy away to really knowing what they're like in the market. Be fully relocating to the UAE. I've managed to land 3 job offers there. A lot of people be like, you need 10 plus years of experience to do that. It's impossible. 3 job offers there, not 1 CV submitted. I'll tell you guys a little of the things that I did. So, number 1.
I'm about to head all the way across London to meet with Murrad. Murrad is a senior DevOps engineer and also the founder of 2 large DevOps communities. He's invited me to his home to discuss how he's getting offers in the DevOps space and helping many others to do the same. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. This is about to be a banger episode, so please enjoy.
First things first, what is a DevOps engineer?
Bro, that's the number 1 question that I absolutely hate. Because I now have to break down on how DevOps is not actually a job and it's actually a culture. Okay. So a common misunderstanding that people have is they believe DevOps is a particular tool or a particular role that people do. It's actually more a mindset, a way of working focused around collaboration between development and operations. So it's more of a way of working and culture rather than an actual job. But how a lot of people use it in practice is companies have titles such as DevOps engineers or platform engineers, and they use it quite interchangeably. But focus around the cloud, CI/CD, things that enable development and so on and so forth.
A DevOps engineer in different companies might mean different things.
Exactly, because you'll be enabling, infrastructure in different ways. They'll be focusing in different areas, and that's why there's always these new titles. If you've not noticed, DevSecOps, MLOps, because what they're doing is essentially applying DevOps principles in different environments, where it's security focused or AI and data focused, and that's why there's constantly all these new terminologies that come around. But I just call them good DevOps engineers, no matter where they are, right?
There are a lot of people trying to get into this industry. A lot of people have interest in it. And a lot of them are concerned with the amount of money that you can make as a DevOps engineer or as someone working in DevOps. What's the range from say a junior to becoming like a senior and a lead?
It's insane to put it into context, and I know some people feel a bit uncomfortable with talking about money.
Not us.
But not us. When you're getting into a career, that's one of the first things that I would have wanted to ask. And that is, how much could I actually earn in this field? Because I've been doing this for so long, because I founded The Engineers, which is one of the largest non-profit DevOps communities out there, and I also founded Coder, which is my current community. I've been really close to the market, and I've had so many students that have landed roles. So my data is actually as thorough as it gets. Nowadays, in this current market, you could break in within a 50 to 60K salary region. It is very doable. Those traditional entry-level roles no longer really exist. They expect you to kind of hit the ground running. The market's more competitive. But if we go from a junior and just speak numbers, right, we're looking at potentially, 50K, £50,000. And then as a mid-level, towards the £85,000 region, between say 70 to 85 or 60 to 85, that sort of range. Junior, you could be 40 to 60. Let's have some healthy ranges. 40 to 60 for a junior, 60 to 85 for a mid-level, and then a senior's anywhere upwards from that, 85 to, maybe 130, 120, depending the type of industry you're in. It's not just seniority and titles. Another impact could be your actual industry. If you're working for a hedge fund, for example, you're gonna make more, even if your title isn't senior, things like that. So, and then there's contracting money.
How do you get into those roles? And also, what's the experience of working as a contractor for you?
Should I tell people the cheat code of how to get into contracting as quick as possible?
This is why we're here.
A lot of people wouldn't want me to say this. They'll be like, you shouldn't be telling people how to make money as quick as possible. But we say it how it is. So if you want to enter contracting, there's 2 routes. You either technically get very, very good and you compete with others for high day rates, which of course takes time. And you can't really put a time frame on how technically good you get, right? For me, it was around the 3.5 year mark, 2.5 year mark, where contracting started to become in scope. For a lot of my friends, it was 5 to 6 years. So it varies in terms of where you're at technically. Another good way is developing expertise in a niche. So for example, I get a lot of contracting offers around data ops, which is basically data focused infrastructure where you're working with things maybe like Databricks, Snowflake, Airflow, these data toolings. I've developed an expertise in that. So now you become that niche, right? And the competition's a lot less. But the fastest way is clearance. SC clearance. If you're able to get that clearance early on, let's say you started off at a consultancy, you worked for a public sector client, I've seen people start contracting on an £850 day rate after a year of experience.
Wow.
Just because they've been able to get that clearance, right? Because now, if I apply for that role and they apply for it and they have 1 year versus my 5 years, if I don't have that clearance that is active, I'm automatically just, my application's disregarded. Contracting especially, they want you to hit the ground running, which requires an active clearance. So working for public sector clients, getting that clearance, leveraging that for contracting is probably the fastest way to make those £700-800 a day. Those projects are known to extend, you know what the public sector's like. Some people I know have sat on $800-850 a day for 3 years.
Wow.
I genuinely know these people and they're like, yeah, this is how it is.
That's crazy. And that's really interesting. Using a public sector job to
As a stepping
get SC clearance, and then using that as a contractor for the rest of your journey. Really interesting. Now, there's one thing I wanted to get back to when we were talking about junior roles or DevOps in general. We talk about entry level roles, and a lot of people struggle with that. A lot of people are trying to get in at the entry level, and it's hard. There's a lot of competition at the entry level roles. Some people, feel like it starts to get a bit hopeless at points because of that competition and because of their lack of experience. What are the keys to getting an entry level role in DevOps or getting a junior role? What do you have to learn, or how do you show that you're capable of doing the job?
If you ask me that question every year for the past 5 years of my career, I would have told you a different answer every time.
Wow.
Because the market is constantly shifting. If you asked me this question 2-3 years ago, I would have told you, here's a good certification pathway, do these certs, they're incredibly in demand, incredibly popular, you'll be getting interviews like that. If you told me, that question now, I'll say don't focus on certifications, focus on doing real world projects, focusing on, beefing up your CV in as many ways as possible. Even, people that tend to break in this, current market, they tend to have an aggressive approach, which involves them going on Fiverr and Upwork to offer their, DevOps services just for a little gig to try and get some sort of hands-on exposure so they could put that in their CV. And another huge thing I'd say is LinkedIn. Now, more than ever, I would be strongly against applying with a CV.
Wow.
I think one of the worst ways to apply for a job is a CV. They get 100 plus applicants in an hour or in a few hours. I actually operate as a hiring manager, right? I'm one of the youngest lead DevOps engineers. I know when we hire for a DevOps engineer, we had over 180 applicants in less than 2 days. I'm not going through 180 CVs. Respectfully, I'm sorry to say it, as as meritocratic as we'd like to believe every system is, you have your day job. If you get sent 180 CVs to go through, you're just gonna pick a few and see where it goes from there. Or the people that actually reach out to you on LinkedIn, right? Those people that take the extra step, outreach. Out of those 180, maybe 2 or 3 would actually find out who the hiring manager is, DM you on LinkedIn, message the recruiter. Everyone's applying like everyone else. That's the number one mistake. And of course, the competition's high if you're going about it the same way. Of course, it's going to look saturated to you, right? Everyone uses the term saturated for the market. Of course it is. If I got 180 CVs, that is the definition of saturation in a day.
So tell us, with LinkedIn, what is the key? Like, how do you set up your profile? What do you need? What skills need to be on there for you to be able to get into that DevOps role?
So visibility is everything on LinkedIn. So connecting with the right people and posting 3 to 4 times a week. If you post 3 to 4 times a week for an entire year, the odds of you not getting headhunted is incredibly low.
Wow.
You have to be so aggressive with it to the point where not being successful is unreasonable. You know, if you post 3 to 4 times a week on your learning journey, documenting everything you're learning, you know, having your GitHub accessible on your LinkedIn profile, having a professional sort of headshot, having a clear headline of your skill set, and you know, you've built those sort of followers, and I can show you, like, you've seen some of my students, right? They've got LinkedIn followers of over 10,000. Their perception of the job market is so different to everyone else's. Everyone else would be complaining about it. They'll be like, they're literally hitting me up and they're like, Murrad, like, I get like 10 DMs a day from recruiters and I haven't got the time for it, or it's so frustrating. I'm like, you don't know how much of a blessed problem that is to have, right?
Wow.
In the current market.
So what do you say to someone who says, Murrad, I don't really want to post, I don't like being in the public eye.
It's cringe.
It's cringe.
It's cringe.
What do you say to that person?
I'd say, look, you really need to step outside of that mindset and stop being concerned about what other people might think of you, and be more concerned about where you want to go in life, because that mindset would dictate so many different areas, right? It's cringe to make content to some people, right? We've got the camera on talking about tech. Some people feel like these guys are a bunch of nerds, right? Some people would think what we're doing is cringe. But we need to step away from that and focus on where we want to be, what we want to achieve, and whatever is cohesive to do that, we do it. Irrespective of what other people might think. Because at the end of the day, they're not going to give you a job that think is cringe. They're not going to, you know, refer you to a job. They're not going to help you with your CV. These aren't the type of people that you want to be around anyways. So sometimes it's a good deterrent to see who actually supports you and who doesn't.
I want to ask you about your journey from where you started to where you are now. Give us a short, brief background of how you got to where you are.
I come from a completely non-technical background. So never studied computer science. I did mechanical engineering at university. Never wrote a line of code in my degree. I then graduated, was focused on, you know, trying to get graduate programs as everyone does. You know, complaining about the market as everyone does. This is not new, by the way. Everyone goes through this when trying to get a graduate job. So I've been there and I relate to a lot of people's pains. And I started off working in a sort of project management role that I hated. I was waking up at 6 a.m, sometimes driving an hour and a half to like our Surrey head office. You know, sometimes I was working weekends and I wasn't happy with where I was at. Something strange happened. One customer that came in one day was actually a software engineer. This was in the car rental industry. And he rented out like a Range Rover for 3 weeks. You can only imagine how much that costs. So I'm already, you know, pocket watching a little bit, kind of curious about what does this guy do? You know, to be able to, you know, rent this car for 3 weeks. And I was talking to him and we were engaging and everything was going really well. And we were speaking for like an hour, just catching up about life. And he was like, oh, I actually need to head back to work now. And I said, oh, I didn't know you worked around here. It's like, I don't. I was like, where are you heading back to work then? I'm just confused. Like, you're still working right now? It's like, yeah. So I'm heading back home to do work. Work from home was so foreign. It wasn't even a thing.
Before COVID,
right? This is foreign, working from home. I was like, okay, what do you do? He's like, like I'm a software engineer. I'm actually in DevOps and things like that. And I was like, oh. He's like, yeah, you know, this is something that even anyone can do. You can do as well. I sent him my CV. And he was like, okay, what you're gonna have to do is learn this, learn that, and a few things. And he gave me a few pointers. There was no handouts. I actually made a LinkedIn post about it. And he messaged me 3 years later when he saw what I was doing on LinkedIn. He's like, oh, I remember you. He's like, wow. I was that customer that walked in that day. And it was like the most emotional moment I've had in years, where I was like, I forgot that episode of my life even happened in a way, right? That I was actually in a job I hated, doing long hours. I thought that was it. I thought this was the norm. I thought I was meant to hate my life in a way. You know, in a 9 to 5, like, there's all this concept around the matrix and how you're stuck in the matrix. You've got this job that you hate and that's it and that's life, right? And I thought that's what it was. And as soon as I came into DevOps, the autonomy increased of my life, everything changed. So From then, I had an aggressive approach. I jumped to being a mid-level after just a year.
Wow.
Started off in a consultancy. I jumped to an AI startup where it was super intense. There was 3 sort of infrastructure engineers in the whole company.
Wow.
Super intense. I learned so much. I was in the deep end. And then that allowed me to accelerate to being a senior engineer in about 3 years of my career. And then I went on to being a lead in under 4.
When you look at other people's story, you can see yourself in that story. So maybe there is someone watching this that has a completely different degree and wants to get into tech or wants to get into DevOps, and they can look at this and say, wow, you know, I could do this just like Murrad did. And that could be you on this podcast next. So Murrad, you help a lot of people getting into DevOps through your community, Codico.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit more about the community, what you guys do.
So the community is something that has been derived over years. So yes, it's now something that is a lot more apparent, a lot more, you know, present to a lot of people. Everyone's hearing about it now. What has actually been happening behind the scenes was originally I founded what is known as The Engineers, which was like a non-profit community where we actually helped over 100 people break into the DevOps space, and the market sort of shifted. That sort of approach of just this certification pathway and you know, getting support here and there with certain certs in certain areas, that was no longer a thing. It was a method that no longer worked, right?
Wow.
A lot of people enjoyed it in 2020, 2021. It was their cheat code into the industry, and now things have shifted to where you actually need you know, much more hand-holding, much more tailored support, a structured bootcamp program. And I know it's quite controversial. Boot camps nowadays is a very controversial topic. Some people hate them. Some people think they're awesome. And some people argue that you're much less likely to get into a role now from a boot camp. It's unrealistic. And these are all actually true points. But I have one counter argument for all of this. If someone's unable to get into, you know, the tech space through a boot camp with structured learning and support, are you now recommending them to go down a self-study route with none of that support, none of that guidance, and you think they're more likely to get in? Like, if boot camps are less effective because of how competitive things are, I think that is even more of a reason for them to be leveraged.
What are some of the things that people are saying about boot camps?
So they'll say, you know, it's a scam, which I don't always understand. I understand it because when you're doing something that is completely new to you, you don't know what is the in-demand tools. I've seen other boot camps out there and I've seen what they teach and I'm like, that is trash. I'm like, that unfortunately is trash, but you wouldn't know, right? Unless you've broken into the industry. So people often say things like it's a scam or you shouldn't have to pay in order to break in, and I feel like it's a lot of outdated advice. You might have a senior engineer that, yeah, very well self-studied, did their cloud practitioner cert and landed a job, but no one's doing that nowadays. It's not possible. And people hold on to that old reference point of how to break in, not knowing that it actually takes so much, you know, practical tools. You know, when people do projects nowadays, I critique them on their security. Have you considered scalability? Have you considered all these different areas of your project? Have you considered, you know, how you have it in a production environment, best practices? And you have to have that, right? You know, someone might build a CI/CD pipeline, but, you know, what security aspects have you considered? What container scanning have you implemented? You can't just figure all of this out without guidance. And you can get guidance in so many ways. You can find mentors on LinkedIn or wherever it might be. But I feel like this whole I'm self-made that people chase, I feel like it's a bad mentality.
There's no doubt that getting into the industry completely from self-studying is the hardest route to take.
Yeah.
And support from people who've actually been in the industry, who, you know, like yourself, has gone from being a junior to a senior in such a short time, who knows the industry, who constantly helps other people, who is able to help someone, would be beneficial. And tell us a little bit more about, you know, some of the students that you've worked with and their journeys.
19. Some people, Hamid, he landed 3 job offers at the age of 19, 3 DevOps offers. That's insane. Like at the age of 19, like I was in university just figuring life out. Other students have landed roles at the age of 20. So a lot of young people have actually been really, really succeeding, which defeats this whole concept about you need 5 years of experience to land, a job, or you need to be a software engineer previously to be a DevOps engineer. There's so much misinformation out there, sadly. I've seen videos where people say, yeah, you need to be a software engineer to get into cloud or security. That's not the case. The fundamentals are Linux and networking. Like, it's not actually being able to code. You can get into certain areas without being a strong programmer. So those are just some of my students. A lot of them have landed 60K roles, 50K plus roles, completely non-technical backgrounds and no degrees. And it's even shocked me.
That's crazy.
Because I didn't even know that.
19? That's crazy. So he has no degree.
He's 19, bro.
yeah.
He's 19, bro. Like I see people like even in his comment section say, "Oh, this isn't possible." Like he's a real person. His LinkedIn is real. Like he's real. He's now 20 and he's a senior platform engineer at the age of 20.
Wow.
And he's a Kubestronauts as well. So he has all his Kubernetes certifications, one of the youngest Kubestronauts in the country. And I think people get so fixated about breaking in. I think tech is no longer about breaking in. It's about staying in and being committed. People that broke in 3 years ago that currently might get laid off, complain about the market, they broke in when things were relatively easier. So they often have the wrong mentality. They've coasted in a big company for 3 years and they've been let off now and they're like, I'm getting interviewed about Kubernetes, I don't know what to do, right? A lot of people actually become legacy in the tooling that they know. They're not as in demand in the market, and this is common. So definitely can be done at 19, 20. They've landed 50K, 60K roles. And I've been witnessing this and I've been in shock myself. Because when I first started teaching them, I would have said, yeah, it's great to start off with a 30K, 40K salary. That's a great win. And now I'm seeing them develop rapidly and continue their development, not just break in. They're still trying to do more projects. They're trying to niche into DevSecOps, MLOps, learn about cloud security. It's a mentality. Upskilling is a mentality.
Yeah, that's so true. Upskilling is a mentality. This is something we always talk about. It's like when you get in, it's easy to be complacent, it's easy to relax. But that journey of keeping it going and keeping learning is something we have to do as engineers to stay relevant, to stay up to date.
One redundancy away. Everyone is one redundancy away. Everyone's one redundancy away to really knowing what they're like in the market. And that's why I always recommend people to regularly interview, even if you're not actively looking elsewhere. I know employers might hate the sound of this, but this is the truth. Because, how would you know if you're in a golden handcuffs position or not? People, for people that don't know, golden handcuffs means you're not actually worth your salary. You might have joined a certain company as a junior, been there for a few years, you're now on a really good 80, 85K salary, and you're thinking, this is amazing. But if you were to interview elsewhere, you wouldn't even get a 50, 60K job. And you don't know that until you actually interview. And you see, okay, for these other 85K roles, they're expecting me to know Kubernetes, they're expecting me to know all of this sort of stuff, and I'm just not there yet. They're asking me about Kafka, what the hell is Kafka? And the only way you can stay relevant is by continuously interviewing and, staying close to the in-demand tools. You know what I used to do as a junior? And maybe you could call me super ambitious, weird. I used to go on Otter, which is now known as Welcome to the Jungle.
Yes.
It's a job board that essentially allows you to filter jobs by salaries or remote locations and things like that. I used to go onto this job board, filter 100K salaries plus. I had 6 months of experience and I'd note down the common denominator of the job specs. I'd be like, okay, they're all asking for Kubernetes. They're all asking for Golang. They're all asking for XYZ. And that's how I actually got into MLOps. Wow. They're all asking for Kubeflow. I was noting down the salaries, what they're all asking for, took those common tools and made projects around them. And that's how I went to interviews with very relevant skills in order to get through them, rather than be outdated and just say, oh, my company doesn't use these tools. Because that's what a lot of people's reality is. Sorry, my company doesn't use Terraform. Sorry, my company doesn't use this. And you're now so much less employable on the market because of that lack of,
That's such a gem. And that's so true. And I can even say I'm guilty of this. being in a role and knowing that, this is a skill that I probably should learn, but they don't really do that in my current job.
Yeah.
So I'll just not do it. But yeah, doing projects on it to learn it and to actually have some practical experience with that tool, such a shout. Yeah. I need to do it myself.
It's a cheat code.
It's a cheat code.
A lot of people ask me that, how do you land these 6-figure jobs and you only have 3 years of experience? Because the other senior engineer that had 9 years doesn't know what Istio is, service mesh and micro K8s. Like, because they genuinely don't know what I know, and it's that simple. Now, do they know other important things? They might even be way more technically adept than me, right? Because they have 8 years of experience. They might have a really strong background in sysadmin, networking, and they came from these sort of industries. At the end of the day, in order for you to provide immense value to a company, you need to be familiar with their sort of tooling. And when companies, reject you for that sort of reason, and I've actually often debated with a lot of senior engineers that have been stubborn and they're like, I refuse to learn this or learn that. Like, if they're not gonna hire me just because I haven't used that tool, then that's on them. And I'm like, the market's getting there. And with AI, things are moving even faster.
Now, recently you've had a change. So yeah, share that with the audience and, let's hear your announcement.
It's being announced here first. You're getting the exclusive drop. I'm gonna be leaving the UK. I'm gonna be relocating. I've traditionally worked remotely and spent a lot of time in the Middle East before, but I'll be fully relocating to the UAE. I've managed to land 3 job offers there that have facilitated that, which again, a lot of people will be like, you need 10 plus years of experience to do that. It's impossible. But I managed to beat the odds in that sense, and I'm actually leaving in the next 2 weeks, so you caught me at the perfect time.
Crazy. 3 job offers.
3.
In the UAE.
Yeah.
How do you go about even applying for roles there and getting them?
Yeah, so it's a different market, completely, right? If you think the UK job market is hard, that is a different level, because you've gone from competing with the UK to now competing with people all over the world, because they're willing to sponsor anyone's visa, anyone that's good enough to do the job, and your competition has gone from maybe 100 applicants in a day that you see on LinkedIn to 1,000. Literally thousands of applicants apply in a day. Now, I had a very different approach, and it's insane what I did. In fact, a lot of it I don't want to give away. My community are well aware of the methods and techniques that I have. I'll tell you guys a little of the things that I did. So, number one, your CV needs to be reframed completely differently over there, right? It's really important to have a picture on your CV. It's really important to have, certain information that might be confidential is actually a standard part of the process. Right. So when you apply over there, the recruiter will say, what's your date of birth? What's your salary, your current salary? And you have to tell them this. Okay. It's not one of those sort of things where you could debate it and be like, what's the budget? You're trying to negotiate. Yep. Over there, that stuff doesn't work. Outreaching, I was extremely focused on outreaching to hiring managers and recruiters. I spent a long time connecting with recruiters. I used to set my alarm at 5:30 a.m. for the time zone difference, when they typically start at like 8:30, to try and catch them in the morning, or when they kind of become active, and I'll like double message, follow up. I'd web scrape their emails and WhatsApp numbers. So there's actual tools out there that allow you to find a recruiter's WhatsApp number, and in the UAE, they navigate with WhatsApp. WhatsApp is the common sort of messaging approach for even businesses, right? If you want to get something off Uber Eats, it'll be the guy will message you on WhatsApp, right? It's that sort of thing. So I used I found certain recruiters on WhatsApp, messaged them, sent them a very direct message with my LinkedIn profile, with my CV, very direct about the role, showing why I'm a good fit. I'll have a good headline, the things I've done in that industry. And with the emerging AI landscape in Abu Dhabi, which is getting incredibly popular, loads of AI startups are existing, I focused around MLOps roles because it started to become very popular, data platform, and leveraged my expertise and background working in AI infrastructure and targeted those sort of roles. So managed to get a few interviews, managed to do really well, thankfully, and I landed a few job offers.
It sounds like you put in a lot of strategy
Yeah.
to the way you applied for these jobs and the way you went about getting a role. How important is like strategy in job applications? Because you know, people just apply for jobs, or some people don't have the right strategy for the way they go about applying.
But I never submitted my CV for any of my job offers.
Wow.
And that should speak volumes. 3 job offers there, not 1 CV submitted, right? It's just ineffective. And I feel like it's easier to feel sorry for yourself, not have a strategy, apply on LinkedIn, click easy apply, you know, and then be like, oh, I got rejected, I got an automated rejection email. Well, there was no strategy in that approach, right? I was so strategic and I kept on refining it. In fact, I sent videos to recruiters. I sent Loom videos.
Whoa.
I swear there's this. I have sent Loom videos to recruiters.
That's crazy.
Screen sharing the job spec alongside with my CV and why I believe I'm a close fit. Could show you on my phone.
Yeah.
Bro, and it will be me just actually talking through things.
No way.
Hey Carl, hope you're keeping well. I'm sure you've never been reached out to in this format by a candidate before, but I came across this senior cloud automation engineer role. Let me walk you through why I think I'm a good fit for the role. Relevant certifications that they might be looking for. I have all 3. Certified Kubernetes Administrator, Certified Solution Architect Associate. The role involves optimizing cloud infrastructure for AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud. And that, you know, when you're working in that sort of multi-cloud environment, it generally sort of insinuates that you're heading towards using Terraform as much as possible, as is cloud agnostic and provides those benefits, having that templated approach and deploying to different cloud providers. That's what Terraform is about, right? So appreciate your time. Hopefully you can get back to me in regards to the role. Take care. I've gone above and beyond, and like at first I wasn't successful. For the first week where I was just DMing recruiters, things weren't really working out, to be honest. I was getting demotivated. I was like, damn, it's gonna be so hard to land a role out here.
Yeah.
And then I sent a recruiter a voice note. He's like, oh, you know what? I really enjoyed that voice note. That was really different. I decided to give you a call and follow up with you. I was like, oh, so they like you being different from all the other candidates. And I started noticing I need to separate myself from these thousands of other applicants.
Yeah.
Whatever that entails. Videos, voice notes, direct emails, web scraping their emails. I had such an aggressive approach.
Wow.
Where like, they'd probably have to block me. They'd probably have to be like, this guy's harassing us. Like, we need to block this guy and never let him apply again. And
Wow.
I'd rather have that than you never know what's happening. What if you didn't try this or try that? So
I think the approaches that you have are incredibly unique.
Yeah.
No one else is doing this.
that's why my students are getting jobs, right?
Wow.
No one else is really. I'm putting people on with free game, you know.
real.
And I'm happy to always, you know, provide value and give insights. But no one's doing this, which is the reason why no one's got 3 job offers in the UAE.
Wow.
It's very rare. I have not really seen someone do that in a 4-week period. Very rare.
Crazy. Thank you so much for being part of this podcast. The last thing I want to ask you is to share your socials and the places that anyone could find you that wants to reach out to you, speak to you, or your other platforms, or anything else you want to shout out.
Tech with Murrad. I'm there on LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube soon. You've motivated me and inspired me to jump on YouTube. Yeah, Codeco is the community. That's where we've helped hundreds of people break into the DevOps space. Shout out to some of my students that are probably watching this. Hamid, Hayes, Zainab, Muzzy, Najib. For those, I can keep naming them all day. So
Thanks so much for watching Tech Certified Podcast. We'll be back for the next episode.